Hello, and welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan. I've been practicing law for 25 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. I often write about this stuff for places like roadandtrack.com. And today we're going to talk about 6 things attorneys wish you knew. I wrote an article about this a long time ago. I even did a podcast on this in my pre-video days. So today is just a video, not an audio. I mean, I know you can hear me talking, but there is no accompanying podcast for this because I did a podcast, episode 33, many years ago. But 6 things attorneys wish you knew. And every time I talk to attorneys, we talk about this stuff. And I often try to tell this stuff to clients as well, because clients often come in with some notions about lawyers and the law. And this is stuff, if you understand this going into your law office to speak to your attorney, you'll all get along better. That is you and your attorney. So number 1, be aware of the fact that lawyers don't write the laws. I didn't write the law that you are accused of breaking. I didn't write the law that we are trying to enforce with a lawsuit. If you are unhappy with the way the law is written, you and I can talk about it all day long. We can debate the law just as an intellectual exercise. But I get people, when I explain the law to them, they get mad at me. And I like to tell myself they're not mad at me, they're mad at the law. But it often comes across like they're mad at me because they're often yelling at me about this stupid law. And I explain and say, I didn't write the law. I'm simply here to tell you how the law works, walk you through the system, try to make the laws work for you, try to, help you work out the situation because of the law, but I don't write the law. The laws are written by legislators, and those are the people that you elect every 2, 4, or 6 years, depending on how often they run. And if you don't like the laws, call them up and complain to them. The problem is, most people don't care about the laws until they encounter them in a bad setting. That is, you've been arrested or you've been wronged and you need to file a lawsuit. Number 2, attorneys are just as frustrated by the legal system as you are. I've had people tell me, they say, Steve, the legal system is slow, the courts are slow, and attorneys like it because they make more money that way. I actually had a guy argue with me and say, Steve, you're going into the wrong profession because becoming an attorney, you're becoming part of the problem. And I said, what's the problem? He said, our legal system is a mess because attorneys like it that way. I have news for you. Attorneys hate the system just as much as you do when it comes to the inefficiencies within the court system. If a court is slow, we don't like it. If we're sitting in court for 3 hours waiting for a judge to hit the bench, we don't like that either. I'd much rather be back in my office working and accomplishing something than sitting in a courtroom waiting for something to happen. And I know people say, well, Steve, what about attorneys who charge by the hour? I suppose if an attorney is being charged by the hour, or is charging by the hour, and he's getting to charge a client for sitting there for 3 hours because nothing's happening, I suppose he could say I'm making money. But even so, most attorneys I know who are being paid by the hour would rather be doing something constructive because even they know that their client is unhappy looking at them and seeing the imaginary clock running like in a taxi cab that's just billing them time. So we're just as unhappy with how inefficient the system is. And most attorneys can even tell you which courts are more efficient or which judges are more efficient. There was a judge named Barry Howard in Oakland County a few years ago who was one of the most efficient judges, I'm guessing, in the history of mankind. And he would get to court early, and if attorneys got there early, he'd just start calling cases. And he would routinely look around with nothing to do and say, is there anybody ready to go? I'm ready. And so we like efficient courts. We don't like inefficient courts. We are just as frustrated as you are. So again, if there's something happening and the court's going a little slower than you like, don't yell at the attorney because it's probably not the attorney's fault. Now, another thing you need to know, this is number 3 on the list. A good attorney cannot win a bad case as easily as a good one. And a lot of people think, I've got a really screwed up case. I'm in a lot of trouble. I need to get a good attorney who can win this for me. And people think that, well, if you've got a good case, you can win it with a bad attorney. And if you've got a bad case, you can win it with a good attorney. That's not how it works. A bad case is difficult to win, good attorney or bad. And a good case is winnable by a bad attorney or a good attorney. I mean, don't get me wrong, a bad attorney can screw up anything. We want to avoid them altogether. But for some odd reason, everyone seems to think that if you've got the worst case on earth, okay, and the example I jokingly give is they've got videotape of you leaning out of a moving vehicle, shooting at deer out of season, and you think that you can get off by hiring a good attorney who's going to go in and come up with some really crazy legal shenanigans. It's not going to happen. There's some cases that just aren't winnable. Now, I know you're going to say, hey, Steve, O.J. Simpson, he's going to be a free man shortly. Yeah, once in a while, someone gets lucky, but that's an extreme anomaly. The average case, okay, it's won or lost on its merits as long as you have a competent attorney. This idea that you can find yourself a Perry Mason or some magical attorney who's going to come into court and get the whole courtroom spinning and the judge with stars in his eyes is going to dismiss you and apologize to you for having put you through this. It's not going to happen. So a good attorney cannot win a bad case as easily as a good one. And this good attorney out there that's going to, save the day, it's probably not going to happen. Number 4, attorneys cannot afford to work for free. And every now and then I get asked by somebody, they say, Steve, I got a case I want you to handle, and it's not a lemon law case, so there's no statutory fees you can recover. And I say, well, I'd have to charge you for that. And they say, well, can't you do it for free? And I say, no, I'm really sorry, I can't. I'm busy, and I don't do free cases like that. People say, well, I've heard that once in a while attorneys do things pro bono. And pro bono, I think, means for free, doesn't it? And it's Latin, it means something else, but that's kind of what it interprets into. And I say, well, I've helped people in pro bono cases who really needed help. But simply saying, Steve, will you take a lawsuit and file this lawsuit that has no chance of ever getting anybody any money for free? No, because like most people who run businesses, I've got phone bills. I've got equipment to pay for. I've got people working for me. Everything I do costs money. To file a lawsuit costs money. To mail a letter costs money. I do still have to send mail once in a while. Like I said, phones and things. So overhead, and an attorney is like any other professional with bills and overhead and costs and so on. And for me to keep the lights on, as they say, see these bright things shining in my eyes? To keep the lights on costs money. And so the idea that I'm going to take, a chunk of my time and throw it out the window on a free case, well, it'll be harder to keep the lights on. But also, there's something you have to remember that we can never predict how long a case is going to take. So someone who says to me, Steve, will you take my lawsuit and handle it for free? You have to understand that if a lawsuit goes south, as we say, if a lawsuit goes or sideways or gets out of control, a lawsuit can take a lot of time. And it means we file the lawsuit and they file an answer and we have some discovery back and forth and we go to depositions and we go to pretrial conferences, we go to settlement conferences, and then we have a trial, and a trial, spend a few days in court. The idea about putting like hundreds of hours into a file on a guarantee of zero return, not many attorneys can do that. And I mean, literally, we can't do that. If we did actually do that on a regular basis, we'd go out of business. And you'd much rather have an attorney who can stay in business because he's good at what he does. So I specialize in certain kinds of cases. Those are what I handle. If I can't handle your case, don't take it as an insult, but I also can't handle your case for free because I expect my cases and need my cases to actually make money. Number 5, if you think you can save money by handling your case on your own, don't be upset when an attorney tells you how expensive it is to straighten your case out later. And my good friend Adam from North Carolina pointed this out to me that he's had several cases, and so have I, every attorney has, where somebody said, something, this law thing can't be that difficult. I'm simply going to start this on my own. I heard about this crazy person who took on the system and filed their own paperwork. Next thing you know, they're in front of the Supreme Court, and they changed the law, and they made headlines. And they did it all themselves by just being smart. And technically speaking, you are allowed to be your own attorney in most cases, as long as you're not crazy. And so if you want to, you can. But what has happened is I've met people who call me and they say, Steve, I filed a lawsuit because I thought, how hard can it be? And now it's gotten a little more complicated than I thought it was going to be. And I'd like you to come on board. And there's a related story here where I've also gotten the story where someone said, Steve, I have a case and I didn't realize I should have contacted a specialist. And so I went to my local attorney, the same guy who, does my, wills for me, and he's handled a couple contract matters, and he's also handled a few traffic tickets for me. And I went to him and said, hey, why don't you file a lemon law case for me? So he did. And now he's in over his head. And will you help us out? And I've actually gotten that phone call from the client before. And I've also gotten the phone call from the attorney before. I've actually had an attorney say, Steve, I'm over my head. Help me. And only once in 25 years have I actually said, yes, I will try to help you out, speaking to the attorney, because the attorney called me and the client called me, okay? And they both said, we need your help, and I actually helped that person out. But generally speaking, we don't do that because I've seen it before where an attorney filed a lawsuit, an answer was filed, litigation ensued, they're halfway through the case, and now they're facing what we call summary judgment, where they're getting all their causes of action thrown out because they're inappropriate. There's almost nothing left in the case. And now they call me up and say, Steve, what do I do? And I say, well, I'm looking at your complaint. You didn't file the right causes of action. Like you missed the boat back at the dock. I mean, this is I hate to use bad analogies, but you screwed this case up on day one. And now you want me to fix that? And the problem is, it's difficult to fix something when the plane is going down in flames. Again, bad analogy, but I'm sorry. It's appropriate. And so a lot of attorneys, myself included, don't want to get involved in a case that's already been screwed up by somebody else. It's a no-win proposition, okay? And the problem is, it's even worse when it's a non-attorney who started the case. And I've had that happen before where a judge actually told somebody and said, look, you should hire an attorney. They didn't do it. You should hire an attorney. They didn't do it. You should hire an attorney. And finally they say, okay, I'm going to go hire an attorney. And they call me up and say, Judge, this judge told me 3 times I should hire an attorney. I want to hire you. And I say, wait, he told you that 3 times at the same hearing? No, 3 different hearings. Where are you in this case? Oh, we're going to trial next week. But it's a simple case. If it was a simple case, you wouldn't need an attorney. So, again, if you think you can save money by handling the case on your own, don't be upset when we tell you how expensive it is to straighten the case out later. Likewise, if you hire a non-specialist or the wrong attorney at the beginning of your case, don't be surprised to find out that it's either impossible or more expensive to get another attorney to come in and straighten the mess out later. No one wants to do that. I like to start with a blank slate and get things going in my own direction. And somebody says, hey, jump aboard here and try to straighten this out for us. Like I said, it's a thankless job. I don't want it. Number 6, this one kills me, and it gets every attorney. Every attorney has had someone say to them, when we're standing out in the hallway in a courtroom in particular, and the courthouse, and the client says, you know something, I know a guy who had this exact same charge in front of this judge, and he pulled some mumbo jumbo, his attorney did, and got the whole thing thrown out. Or I know a guy who had an attorney who had a lawsuit just like mine, and he got $1 million in a ham sandwich. I mean, just some crazy thing, okay? And people always claim that they know a guy who had an attorney, or they know a guy who got out of this. And it's always that friend of a friend kind of urban legend structure to the story where we know it's not true, okay? You didn't really know a guy who was on film while driving in a moving vehicle shooting at deer out of season, who got the case thrown out of court and the judge apologized to them because somebody pulled some legal shenanigans. That didn't happen. Didn't happen. And what I always like to say to people jokingly, they go, yeah, I know a guy who hired a guy who got this thing thrown out. I say, go hire that guy then. Why didn't you hire him? Why are you hiring me? Go hire that guy. And it's just people talking. It's like bar talk. And I don't know why people do that, but they do that all the time. And it's even worse when I've actually had someone tell me, they say, well, someone told me that they knew a guy. So it's they couldn't find that person if they wanted to. And I've also been in court before where, best example, a client is there. Like, let's suppose a woman buys a car, okay, and the car's a lemon. So we're in court on this matter, and we go to court, and she shows up, and there's a man with her, and she goes, "Oh, this is my boyfriend. This is Bob." Okay, so if she wants Bob there, and Bob's involved in our discussions, we can sit there and talk, and she and I and Bob can discuss things all day long. It's not, attorney-client privilege or anything like that. I mean, if she, allows it. And I've had that happen before where there's the woman there, and I'm the attorney, and whenever she's talking to me, she listens to me. But for some odd reason, when Bob is there, suddenly she defers to Bob. And I've actually had it more than once where the other person looks at me and goes, I don't know why you think you can only get this. Friend of mine got this, and it can be in a lawsuit setting. It can be in a traffic court situation where they say, oh, a friend of mine had this identical ticket and got it thrown out because he had a better attorney than you. And I'm always like I said, I'm not shy about it. I'll say, well, why didn't you guys hire him? I mean, seriously, if there's this magical attorney out there who can make you, wave his magic wand and get you whatever you're entitled to, why don't you hire that person? Okay? And again, the person doesn't exist. So why bring it up? Okay, it's an urban legend, but for some odd reason, these are the stories that attorneys often hear. We get told these things by our clients. So the 6 things attorneys wish you knew. I'm going to count them down 1 through 6. Like this is Casey Kasem, but just the top 6. Number 1, we don't write the laws. So if you're upset about the laws, you can talk to me about it. We can discuss it, but don't yell at me. Yell at your legislator because your legislator is the one who wrote the law. And don't get me wrong. I agree with you that many of the laws are cockamamie. Okay? Many of the laws should be rewritten or simply removed from the books. But I don't write them. It's my job to explain them to you and teach you how to use them to your advantage. Number 2, attorneys are just as frustrated by the legal system's inefficiencies as you are. So when the court goes slow, or the court loses documents, or the court reschedules something, I'm frustrated, you're frustrated. Again, you can express your frustration to me, but don't blame it on me and don't think I'm happy about it, because I'm not. Number 3, a good attorney cannot win a bad case as easily as a good one. So if you've got a bad case, understand it's going to be a bad case and there's only so much you can do with it, good attorney or otherwise, but it's not like, hey, a good attorney can salvage anything. That ain't true. A good attorney can do a better job than a bad attorney, but that's not a guarantee that they can win everything because they are a good attorney. Number 4, we can't afford to work for free. Yeah, once in a while we'll handle a pro bono case. Once in a while if I feel sorry for somebody, I'll cut my fee. Once in a while I'll help you out. I might write you a letter or something like that. But I cannot afford to drop my paying clients or my paying cases to take on some legal quandary and morass of litigation as a sympathy case simply because I've got bills to pay and overhead like any other business. Number 5, if you think you can save money by handling your own case, knock yourself out, but understand that might make it more difficult for another attorney to come along and salvage it later. And we've all encountered that, whether it's another attorney or another, just a person handling their own case. Those cases are started by somebody else. It's going to be very, very difficult for me to get in there and fix it later, which might not happen. So think long and hard before you decide to handle your own case. And number 6, if you know a guy who knew a guy who got another guy off because he pulled some fancy pants tricks in court, hire that guy, okay? Because that guy probably doesn't exist. So those are the 6 things attorneys wish you knew. I hope you understand them, take them to heart, and read them before you go in and talk to your own attorney about something. Questions or comments, as always, shoot them my way, lehtoslaw.com, LEHTOSLAW.com. I'm on Twitter at Steve Lehto, at STEVELEHTO, and this show is on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Podbean, Google Play, and YouTube. Thanks for watching and listening. Bye-bye.